Here's a question I've been mulling over lately. Is there a ghost in Man of Medan? As I laid out in my video about the one real ghost in Little Hope, we can safely say that, like alien vampires and the Angel of Death, ghosts are real in the world of dark pictures. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of them, but they're out there. And I'd argue including in Man of Medan, the first Dark Pictures game. This might seem like a stretch, of course, since the whole plot of the game is about the US military smuggling Manchurian Gold, the chemical weapon that Japan's Unit 731 developed by reverse engineering vampire saliva back into the United States. Also, there was probably a vampire corpse aboard, but you can just check out the video devoted to that theory if you want to know more. All the scares on the Medan were just reactions to the Manchurian Gold, right? It drove people mad and gave them heart attacks in the past, then a weakened, watered-down form of it causes hallucinations in the present. We know it's just chemicals because you can stop the effects by getting a little bit of fresh air, like when Fliss opens the door in the hold, or they stick the rebreather on Junior. That's all accurate, of course. 100% of the scares aboard the Orang Medan are caused by the Manchurian Gold. In the main game, at least. That's why there's no scares between them getting topside and making the decision to go back down below. And also Conrad is able to shake off the vision of the witch once he arrives on top of the smokestack. Here's a question for you, though. How is the ship there at all? We have a pretty good idea of the timeline of the Orang Medan. It traveled a few weeks out from China, where it ran into a horrific storm, dropped anchor in the hopes of finding a guy that had jumped overboard, and then everybody died during the chemical leak. It's important to note that, with the crew dead and the anchor dropped, that ship was not going anywhere. Was it off its planned course? Yes, but not so far that the rescue plane wasn't able to find it with relative ease. Seriously, they got there right away. Let's check out the comic book that you unlock by finding all of the secrets. In case you didn't know, this is a thing that the Dark Pictures game did for the first two titles. Once you got every secret you unlocked, a comic book designed to put all of those secrets into the proper narrative context, laying out the story that they tell in the correct order. It was amazing in Man of Medan, but kind of fell apart in Little Hope, since none of the secrets were real, and one of the two issues was the diary of a person that didn't exist, making it super unclear what players were supposed to be reading. But I'm not here to complain about the Little Hope comic book. I already made a video about that. Unless I forgot to, in which case, I'll get on that soon. The point is, after Little Hope they stopped doing this, which is a pity. I would have loved to see a comic book adaptation of The Dig, or one detailing the Morello's days on Dumet's Island. Instead, we get Jonathan's journal in House of Ashes, and the podcast, interviews, and newspaper videos from Devil and Me. Seriously, how great would a 2-issue series have been? One detailing Hector's backstory and the other following the Morellos on the island? Of course, doing those comic books would necessarily reveal the big secret in each of the games, like the murder mystery in Ashes, or the two Dumets in Devil, and that's obviously something they're not interested in doing. But, enough about comic books. We're here to talk ghosts. If we look at the timeline of the disaster on the Medan, we realize that it all went down really, really quickly. The gas spread and everyone was dead in just a couple of hours. Almost the entire crew was gone by the time the rescue plane managed to locate them, which it did with surprising speed. The call went out just after midnight, and even without the ship's exact location, the rescue plane was able to find it within hours, at night, during a thunderstorm. We're talking functionally zero visibility here, yet they managed to get there quite quickly, because the airfield's radio equipment is able to offer what direction the signal is coming from within a few degrees of accuracy. You can't tell exactly how far it is away, of course, but you can tell which direction to send the planes in. Now, if you're searching for a raft or someone whose inflatable banana boat got caught in a current and pulled them out to sea, you have to be relatively close to the ocean, maybe just 1,000 feet up if you want to have a hope of spotting something. But the Orang Medan is the length of a football field. From 10,000 feet, the human eye can, unaided, make out individual houses. So spotting a boat the size of the Orang Medan in the open ocean on a clear day would be a pretty trivial matter if you had a bearing to base your search on. It's not like the Medan is even that far from places where people live. While we don't know exactly where it is, the coordinates we get are complete nonsense, pointing to a spot in the ocean 1,200 nautical miles away from French Polynesia, and something like 1,500 miles south of the estimation point that appears on the map in the Orang Medan. We can make a pretty good guesstimation based on the travel time of the characters in the game. It takes the Duke approximately 8 hours to get from their dock, which, let's assume it's on the east side of the islands, to the place where the rescue plane crashed. Assuming the Duke travels at an average of 20 knots, the wreck is somewhere around 180 miles away from their starting position. And since they travel for less than an hour with Olsen at the helm, it's fair to say that the Medan is less than 20 miles from the wrecked plane, which is a perfectly reasonable distance for it to have gotten after being horribly damaged by the anti-aircraft fire. Assuming that the Duke was headed essentially due east from French Polynesia, this places the main action of the game somewhere in the vicinity of the island of Anna, which actually makes a ton of sense since it's not like the fisherman's boat is particularly well stocked or suited for long voyages. They didn't follow the Duke all the way from the big island. These guys live somewhere nearby, and Anna is the most logical location for their home base. It's also probably where Conrad ends up and calls for help from if he escapes from the boat, because there's no way that this boat has enough fuel to make it back to where they started. This means that the Orang Medan, when they find it, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 miles away from an inhabited island, one that has an airport. Given the aforementioned ease at which you can spot a ship the size of the Medan from the air, we have to ask the big question. Why hasn't anyone found it yet? We know based on Aegis's reaction at the end of the game that the government is very, very interested in retrieving its cargo and keeping the vampire corpse aboard a secret. So why would they give up after a single attempt at looking for it? They knew its approximate location, and the dropped anchor ensures that it won't be going anywhere. Why not send out another plane the next morning? When the helicopter crashed in the perfect storm trying to rescue that yacht, the Coast Guard didn't give up. They kept looking, and that was just a yacht, not a boat full of vital military secrets. So again, we've got to ask, how did no one find the ship? Even if you want to say that the US government washed its hands of the whole thing and stopped looking, there are plenty of other people in the area. Fishing ships, cargo ships, planes flying people in and out of French Polynesia. A boat this big would have been spotted. So why wasn't it? There's only one possible explanation for why they didn't find it the moment the storm cleared the next day. Because it wasn't there. Let's talk a little about boat maintenance. Did you know that ship hulls have to be completely repainted every 3 to 7 years? A cargo or warship might be in service for as many as 40 years, and in that time, every half a decade you have to put them in dock and completely repaint the hull. Hulls are made of steel, you see, and seawater is really, really good at eating steel. The only thing that keeps them from rusting out is the nautical paint slathered all over the hull. So how is the Medan still floating after 70 years, when it should have sunk in like the early 50s? Yes, the ship is rusty and aged, but nowhere near what it should be given the amount of time it's theoretically been out there. The Orang Medan should have been a pile of rusted scrap at the bottom of the ocean by now, not a surprisingly functional ship with a working electrical system. So why isn't it? Because it's exactly what it seems to be. A ghost ship. While we can't possibly guess the specific metaphysical process that led to it happening, it's safe to say that there was so much death and horror on the ship the night of the chemical leak that a spiritual portal was opened, and the Orang Medan was pulled inside of it. We have to imagine that, like the Flying Dutchman, the ship reappears from time to time, moving into our reality, perhaps just on stormy nights like the one during which the Manchurian Gold drove the crew to madness and murder. Over 3/4 of a century it's been doing this. The ship aged and rusted, and moving back and forth between reality and the nether space it was contained in caused things to get a little weird. There's no better example of this strangeness than the submerged hold that the player can swim through after rescuing Junior. Here's Fliss opening the door in the hold and getting some fresh air. Note that the hold she was in, the one that contains the Manchurian Gold, is approximately 30 feet above the waterline. If that's the case, though, how on earth can the hold next to it be completely full of water? These rooms are rusty and full of holes. There's no way that rain could have completely filled it. Even if the swimming sequence is partially a hallucination and the room the player moves through isn't actually that huge, the fight in the hold still confirms that there's plenty enough water in that room to knock everybody over and flood the 2 giant holds connected to it. This water literally has to be of supernatural origin, just as spending most of its time in some kind of phantom realm is the only way that the Orang Medan could still possibly be floating when the characters find it. There's a ghost in Man of Medan, and the ghost is the Man of Medan. Somehow the shared trauma of all the people who died aboard it combined to create a spirit so powerful that it preserved evidence of their agony for 3/4 of a century, just waiting for someone to find it so that it could force them through a version of what the crew had experienced. So we found a ghost in both Man of Medan and Little Hope. I haven't seen any evidence of them in House of Ashes or Devil in Me, but who knows what closer inspection will reveal. I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time and you'd like to see more, please remember to like and subscribe. Questions or comments can be dropped in the comments section below the video. Also, if you have an idea for a topic you'd like to see me cover, that's the place to put it. We'll see you back here for more Dark Pictures videos, but until then I'll say that's right. Au revoir.